Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the newest episode of the Theater Enthusiast podcast. I know I say this a lot, but I really am excited about our next guest. And I already told them before we started when they said, "How about interviewing this person?" I said, "Abso-fucking-lutely yes." But I didn't say that in the email response. So I was very excited because I
You
wanted
are
to
theater
be,
and
yes. And I've wanted to interview you for a very long time because, like I said, I've been a fan of yours since I saw you in Matilda. That's a hint before I even said your name. Anyway, so they are a Tony-winning performer from Matilda, Obie winner, just all of the awards nominated this season for their amazing work. And if you've listened to the podcast, if you follow me on Instagram, you know how vocal I have been about everybody needing to see the show. John Proctor is the villain. I'm so excited to welcome Gabriel Ebert. Whoa, round of applause. I'm so excited. I keep saying I'm so excited, but I am. I'm thrilled that you're here. Like I told you, it's my favorite play of this season. I've seen it 4.5 times.
wow. Which
Yeah.
happened for the second?
Oh, the second half.
Second.
Because I love audience reactions, especially if I know what's coming.
Sure.
And before we even start anything, for those listening who have not seen John Proctor, this episode will most likely contain a lot of spoilers. So this is a very big disclaimer because I have so many questions. And the last time I saw the show, I purposely traded a shift with someone just so I can watch the show and concentrate on you specifically so I can see your reactions to things.
Wow. That's amazing.
So, especially in the last scene, you had this one moment that I cannot wait to talk to you about, and which we will talk about because I'm
Fascinating.
so curious about all of it. But before we get into all of that, I always like to start from the very beginning. I know you're from Colorado. You grew up without a television.
Yes.
So, someone who grew up without a television, I'm curious to know how and why and what got you into performing and wanted to perform.
Well, I think like a decent amount of people in show business, I grew up in the church. My father's a minister. And so from a very young age, I was on stage singing with him. He's also a singer-songwriter, and he taught me how to sing harmony. So for a long time, we had a kind of two-man game going where he would preach and we would sing songs together. And he kind of drilled me on Everly Brothers harmonies and Simon and Garfunkel harmonies. So that was kind of how I learned to sing in harmony. And then, of course, I was in choirs as a boy. I was in the church choir, but then there was also this kind of prestigious choir in Colorado called the Colorado Children's Chorale, which I was in for several years. So from as long as I can remember, I've been on stage doing this thing. You know, one of the things I really have to thank my parents for is they say you need to put in 10,000 hours to get good at something. And I think before I was even conscious about the effort of putting in these hours, I had put in a few thousand just by their support and their putting me in these situations. So, like at the church, you know, I was in the pageants when I was young. I played the angel Gabriel when I was probably 4 or 5. Of course, my name is Gabriel.
Mhm.
And it blossomed into other things. And I learned how to play the guitar. My dad and I would play guitar together and a little piano here and there. So, you know, I'm amazed when I talk to other people. The church is a place that starts a lot of performers. And then they think, oh, as my faith is changing or as my ideas are changing, you know, the theater kind of becomes the new church. And it certainly did for me.
Yeah. I know you went to a performing arts high school and you've said it wasn't just acting, there was all different other like tech stuff and all that, but what led you to Juilliard?
Yes, I went to Denver School of the Arts, which is like a 6 through 12 program in Denver. Creative writing, there's definitely vocal arts, dance, drama, but there's also, yeah, technical elements, film, things of this nature. So I was in the drama program and I sang in the choir, excuse me. And maybe because I grew up without a television or because I'm kind of a country mouse, I had never heard of Juilliard. I must be honest. I always wanted to come to New York because I wanted to do plays. I wanted to be on Broadway.
Mhm.
I love with the theater. But I just thought of NYU because it was New York University and I wanted to be in New York City. And I remember one of my dear friends, who was a year older than me, said, "You should really audition for Juilliard." And I was like, "What's Juilliard?" And then as I was beginning my college application process, I sort of learned about Juilliard, which is intimidating, of course, but exciting. And as irony would have it, I didn't get into NYU, and I did get into the Juilliard School and was able to go there. They take about half the class from undergrad, from straight out of high school, and then half of the class are graduate students. And I don't know how the fates aligned, but I was able to be one of the undergraduate students there and got in when I was 18 years old. And yeah, that's what brought me to New York City 20 years ago.
Oh, age. I,
Yes.
I don't, I will age myself if I say like a certain numbered high school reunion is this year, but I'm not going to that. I don't even know if it's happening. So you made your Broadway debut in Red, correct?
Mhm.
And so I do want to bring up the next show that you did on Broadway because I always ask people their top going theater experiences, and this was one of mine, and it was Brief Encounter.
How beautiful. Yeah, that
Yeah,
was
yeah, it was. So, and you learned the ukulele for that, right?
I did. Yes, I sort of fibbed a little bit on my audition, because I play piano and I play guitar, and they said, "Can you play the bass? Can you play the upright bass?" I said, "Sure." Can you play the
Yeah.
ukulele? Sure. Of course, I never had played either, but I had a decent enough understanding of music and of stringed instruments, I thought, from playing the guitar. And
Mhm.
so, but then I had a great audition. And Emma Rice, the director, is this very fun, playful, brilliant theater artist. And I think saw something in me. We really connected. And yeah, she took a chance. And I got to fly to London and rehearse Brief Encounter. And I've been playing the ukulele ever since. Actually,
Oh, oh,
I have one in my dressing room right now.
amazing. I thought you were about to break it. You don't have to play, don't worry.
No,
But
no, too early. Too early in the podcast for that.
yes, maybe some other episode. But I had to mention it because I only saw it twice on Broadway, but I loved it so much. It's like I have to go back and see it, and I got a much better seat. And it was, I think I actually went the second time on its final performance.
Wow.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
yeah, I loved it so much. And even after the play, you guys are in the back of the theater playing for the audience. So it's just, and I feel like at that time, you didn't really see shows like that and
Totally.
creative process behind it. I mean, I feel like now it's a little bit different, but at the time, it was something very special.
Yeah.
Really
And
get to see.
there was something unique about it where it was like completely new, but it was also a throwback to these old music hall shows.
Yeah.
And yeah, as the audience came in, we were dressed in these bellhop costumes and we sang sort of classic, a lot of Cole Porter tunes and Ink Spot songs and stuff like that. Um, there were four of us: bass, trumpet, ukulele, um, and I think a drum. And we would move around the theater as they came in. And then oh, sorry,
It's
calling.
okay.
You see me, right?
Yeah. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
I can see you and hear you. I apologize. Someone's calling, these
How
people.
dare they? Do they not know? Just joking.
But yeah, then after the show, we played a sort of medley of modern day hits, but with our old twist on it, and that was a real treat.
Yeah.
A dream because it was like the fun of theater, and I was only 23 years old. I don't think I really realized how special that was. I remember the older people in that company saying to me, "Kid, it isn't always this special. It isn't always this great." And I thought, well, I think it is. I think it must be because it has been for me. But now, of course, I'm that guy in this play with all these young, great artists, and John Proctor is the villain. And I'm like, wow, you know what, guys? It isn't always this great. You gotta enjoy these moments while they're here.
Yeah, I love there's an interview I saw with Neil Patrick Harris and he talked about how acting careers are kind of like you're surfing.
Mm,
Sometimes you'll get the wave and then you're on the wave and then the next thing you know you're waiting for the next wave to come in,
absolutely.
waiting and waiting and then the wave comes in and you're writing it and then it ends. So I really like that analogy of
Good analogy. Yeah. And sometimes you're just out there paddling.
yeah. Yeah. But like you've had a pretty, I mean, definitely probably not without its ups and downs, but you've had a pretty like great thing. I remember I saw the movie Ricky and the Flash in the theater, and then I saw your face. I was like, oh my God, it's Gabe Ebert. Sorry I called you Gabe, but I don't know you that well yet. But
I have a blessed and lucky ride in many, many ways, certainly. You can call me Gabe.
oh, thank you, Gabe. So next time I'm at John Proctor and I run into you, I'll be like, Gabe, what's up?
Oh, absolutely. Please do.
Will do. So the next thing, because again, we have to get to John Proctor, but I just want to go through
Go
certain
through the
we
go
have
through
to
the
talk about Matilda.
Yeah,
Your Tony-winning role in Matilda. I loved Matilda so much. It just brought me joy. And I also fucking love Leslie Margarita.
I mean, she's magic. How can
Yeah.
you not?
I was lucky enough to work with her during the pandemic. She's come on the podcast. I saw her in Gypsy. I met her after Gypsy for the first time in person, and she's just like everything you want her to be and more. So, but enough about Leslie. Let's talk about you. How did Matilda come into your life?
Wow, I mean, I think part of the reason maybe that Matilda was aware of me is I had done these English transfers. Red came from London, from the Donmar warehouse. So I worked with Michael Page, great English director, great English actors. I did Brief Encounter, which came from London. Emma Rice, great English director, great English artists. And so and then I did Matilda. So it was very strange. I was like the sort of American that you could slot into these English shows. And like some of this stuff I consumed as a boy was Monty Python and the Beatles. I really grew up on the Beatles. So I think I was practicing English accents from an early age without knowing actually it would become a valuable tool.
Yeah.
But part of the reason that I got Matilda, I think, because I was far too young to play that role. I was only 25 years old when I got that part. And I feel like I'm probably the right age now to play Mr. Wormwood. But I had done this great play at Lincoln Center called 4,000 Miles. And Matthew Warchus, the director, had come and seen that production. And one of my castmates, Greta Lee, who is, really having a wonderful wave that she's riding right now,
Yeah.
had done a play called Labette on Broadway with Matthew. And so he came back to see her. I got to meet him. He loved the play. He was really blown away by it. And Jim Carnahan, the casting director who cast Matilda, has always been a big champion of mine and brought me in for all kinds of different roles. And I think somehow my zaniness and my physicality was something that excited Matthew in my audition. And then because he had seen me in 4,000 Miles, he knew that I was an actor that he admired and maybe could trust. And I think because I'm tall, I'm pretty tall. I'm 6'4". I think that allowed me to play older characters at a younger age, just because it carries with it a kind of authority, And because I was on stage with all these little tiny Matildas, there was something dynamic about that. So I think that's kind of how those are the circumstances that led me to actually booking Matilda and getting a chance to do it. I went in, I think, 4 or 5 times to audition for it.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah,
I know this is the very cliche question, but it has to be asked. Tony Knight, winning the Tony, you squatting down to the mic because you're so tall.
that's
What was
right.
that whole experience like?
You know, um, it's crazy because this past weekend I just experienced losing a Tony, and well, not losing. We're all winners,
Right.
but experience of hearing someone else's name called.
Listen, you got to go to the Tony Awards. You got to see Audra McDonald. You got to see Nicole Scherzinger. You got to see the 10th anniversary Hamilton in person. I,
Glory.
my old roommate goes to the Tonys every year for work, and I texted her. I go, "You realize how lucky you are? You got to see the Spring Awakening reunion live. You got to see the Hamilton reunion live. Like, you know how insane that is?"
That's pretty special.
Yeah.
Really pretty wonderful and special. But the two feelings of hearing your name called or not hearing your name called are both they're similar in some ways where it's this jolt of electricity through your body. One is filled with the terror of now I have to go up and talk in front of all these people.
Hmm.
And filled with the terror of oh my God, I was so close. There it goes. Um, but the experience of actually winning the Tony, you'll appreciate. This is where I'll use my curse word.
Oh, please do.
I had a very good showbiz moment that I feel like sort of encapsulates, the highs and lows that come in show business. And sometimes they come so close to each other that you can't fathom. But Alan Cumming, Scarlett Johansson hand me this Tony Award. I, I, I was so young. I don't think I really understood the magnitude of what was happening, but I was really excited that people liked what I was doing. And the day was so crazy because I wore a lot of wigs and makeup as Mr. Wormwood
Hmm.
in a pretty crazy costume. So you get there at 8 a.m. to do your rehearsal, your dress rehearsal for the Tonys. Then you get out of wigs and makeup. You go to your theater, you warm up, you put your wigs and makeup back on, you do your matinee, you quick change out of your wigs and makeup. You get into your red carpet outfit. You go walk the red carpet for the Tonys. Our number was first to Matilda. So I get out of my tuxedo. I put the wigs and makeup back on. I go do my number for Matilda. My category's first. So I run backstage. I take the wigs and makeup off. I put my tuxedo on. I sit down. The second I sit down, best featured actor in a musical. I walk up. I get to make my little speech. And then they cut to commercial. So I walk off stage with Scarlett Johansson and Alan Cumming. And I'm abuzz with the energy of, oh my God, I'm holding a Tony Award. It's mine. They just gave it to me. And Scarlett Johansson goes, oh my God, congratulations. How do you feel? And I started to answer. And a crew guy backstage goes, get the fuck out of the way. He's pushing a huge piece of scenery on. And he didn't say like, move, please. He said, get the fuck out of the way. And I thought, oh yeah, there it goes. That was my moment. Because
That
it's a
doesn't humble a person. I don't know what does.
It's a show. It's a TV show. And he's like, kid, your bit is over. Get the fuck out of the way. And I'm very grateful to that guy because I feel like that it taught me something. It's like, yeah, congrats, kid. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
We got nothing else to do. And so that night had all of that stuff because then we lost Best Musical. And Bertie Carvel, who I thought gave such a brilliant performance, he lost. And so there was like all this elation and all this sorrow as well. The Tony nights are wild because they're filled with so much hope and so much despair all at once. And of course, everyone knows it's just beautiful to be invited and go to the dance. But you also start to think, oh my goodness, this might be our year. This could be mine.
Yeah.
Um, and so yes, it's a real roller coaster, those evenings.
Yeah. Well, we don't have to get into this past Tonys if you don't want to,
Oh
but
no, right? I'm so honored that they nominated me, that they nominated our show. We can talk about anything. I'm not
yeah.
precious.
Well, you know what? We'll put that in the John Proctor section of the podcast because I do want to
We're
get through like two more
we're
things.
2013 right now.
Yeah. We're going to talk about like two more Broadways
Okay.
before we get into it because one of them, Thérèse Raquin, which is your return to Studio 54. I also fucking love Keira Knightley. So I was is somebody calling you again?
Yes, I stopped it. I'm I'm
Oh,
I'm quicker at stopping it now.
great. Just future do not disturb. It helps. Not giving you advice on how to live your life.
Let me do that now. Is that the moon?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Tell me how to live my life.
Oh, okay. Uh, so let's talk more then. Therese Raquin. I remember, spoiler, your death scene
Well, yes.
very well. Another show I was very excited to hear that you were part of because you're also in it with Judith Light, who is incredible at everything she does.
Yes.
Uh,
Magic.
yeah, so how was that? What was that show like for you?
That experience was
Another
wild.
British accent.
Yes, another British accent. I do dabble in the British accents, and in this one it's nice because I'm doing an accent as well. I do love that that's a part of my career is like dialect work. I'm very
I feel like
passionate.
most of your Broadway productions have been a British accent.
Yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
Trying to think.
One, two, three, four, five. Yep.
Passover, Passover. I got to do an American accent. Red was from England, but I did an American accent in it.
Okay.
But yes, certainly. And now, yep, four. And now I'm doing an accent from North Appalachia, which
Yeah.
is a do and was tricky, harder to learn than I had initially intended upon. Okay, so we're in Thérèse Raquin. How was that
Yeah.
experience?
How
And
is it swimming in the water every
and
night?
honored to work with Judith Light,
Yeah.
such a pro. She also had a child like 3 months before we started that play, and never missed a show, never missed a moment. She was so gracious, such a great leader, such a great actor. I was blown away by her. It was a weird one because I was supposed to play this very sickly, sort of this pale, sickly cousin that she's forced into a loveless marriage with. But I was like 7 inches taller than anyone else on stage, and I had just played Robin Hood, so I was like really strong. And so it was a real acting challenge because I had to find a way to kind of make myself small and sickly and weak around around a bunch of people who were smaller than me. And so in that way, it was an interesting physical challenge as an actor. And then, yeah, the set by Beowulf for it was half water, as you remember. And it was very operatic. It was quite huge.
Yeah.
The drowning scene was very hard to stage, but incredibly impactful. And it was a really great way to end Act One. And we came up with a cool trick where I could hold my breath. They cut a little bit of this boat that we were rowing in,
Mm-hmm.
added on these two strings on either side, so we could actually row and pull the water, and the water would move, but the boat would stay in the middle. So it made this illusion like you're watching the boat travel. And then as I would get drowned and go under, there was a little bit of a concave under the boat where I could pop my head up and breathe.
Oh.
So you actually saw me disappear under the water and then stay for an incredibly uncomfortable amount of time. And it was electric. It did something to the audience every night. And then Act Two, I'm supposed to be there as a ghost and to haunt these two people who've murdered me. And we struggled to solve effective ways for the ghost to work. I remember in early previews, I would come out. We did a lot of stuff with makeup. We did a lot of stuff covering me with water and having me walk out, and it would like get laughs and stuff. So ultimately, we cut a lot of the ghostly stuff, and we did it more with voiceover than. So I would sort of be in a microphone backstage.
Yeah.
We were able to really execute some of the ghost stuff physically, but we did it, and that was cool. But one of the great joys was just showing up to work every day with Judith Light. She became a great friend. Still talk to her all the time. And I also met my now wife on that show, which was great. She was the associate director, and so it's a very important show in my life. Yeah.
Well, talking about another important show, I guess you can say that you worked with your wife on was Passover. And the reason I'm bringing that up was I believe it was the first show to reopen on Broadway. I found it really funny that when Waitress opened, so they can be like, we were the first, they're like, we were the first musical to reopen. But technically, if we want to get really technical, you
Yeah.
guys were the first
Or just
actual Broadway production to reopen Broadway with COVID.
that's right. I think all New York theater actually, because there wasn't even like downtowny stuff happening. So we were the first play back, and I think it had been 16 months, something like that, since there had been a play in New York City. Bruce Springsteen kind of took a lot of the credit, because he
Yeah.
got to.
I'm gonna say, so my dad is a huge Springsteen fan. I didn't even see the show because if it was Billy Joel, it'd be a different story. But even my dad, I was in his house once and we were trying to figure out what to watch. And like him, my stepmom on the couch, I'm in a chair, and he's like, "Oh, let's watch this Springsteen thing that they filmed for Netflix." About 10 minutes in, he's like, "I can't watch this." He turned it off. So,
And he loves the boss.
and he loves him. But listen, to each its own. I know people who had like talk about having a religious experience seeing Springsteen.
Of course.
Great. It's not for me.
Sure,
Okay.
sure. And I think he brought in a lot of revenue and a lot of excitement to Broadway, but I think he technically performed like two nights before us. So, and he went, so he sort of got I reopened Broadway, but I'm like, it's not really that.
Yeah,
But
but
Pat,
your
not only,
show did. I'm just gonna go because I didn't even think about Springsteen. So in this conversation, it's Passover.
and it actually is Passover. It actually is. It was those first couple nights that we walked on stage we a big red curtain that opened like a proper Broadway show. And when the curtain went up, especially that first night, the audience stood up and applauded for like 5 minutes. We just had to wait in there. I have never experienced a communal act of celebration and devotion, really, in the same way that I experienced those first few performances of Passover. Some of the laughs that we got, I had to ride like tsunamis. I mean, it was wild. And I don't know if you remember that play, but there's some treacherous territory to go through, especially for my character.
Yeah.
And not only did we reopen Broadway, but we reopened it with that, which was
Yeah.
such sort of tightrope and an indictment of America, but also this really cool theatrical, steeped in vaudeville and clown. It's kind of a riff on Waiting for Godot. So there's all this classical theatrical language in it, but then there's all this really modern language in it. And yeah, it really challenged audiences,
Yeah.
certainly, but it was a thrill, an audience of masked people, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, getting back to the whole standing ovation, I saw actually the return of Waitress. So
You,
when it reopened Broadway or the musical version of it.
and was
Um,
Umbrellist, was she in it?
yeah, so it was they called them like the All Stars. So it was Sarah Bareilles, Drew Daling, and other cast members, Chris Fitzgerald, who returned.
Or
And before the show even started, there was a standing ovation
yeah,
before the curtain even went up. So I think getting back to what you were saying of how there was a 5 minute standing ovation as soon as the curtain went up. Before the curtain went up for Waitress, there was a standing ovation. So I think people were just so excited to see live theater.
I
Um, Transitioning now to our current production of John Proctor's The Villain, which again, I am obsessed with. Hate to say it, but it's true.
love it.
Um, your wife is directed it. Um, how do I say this about your character? For those who have seen it knows, and we'll get into it more. How did you get involved with the show? Was she like, yes, I know who can play this part? Or are they just like,
It's terrible, terrible men.
yeah,
Um, but because in Passover she directed that as well.
yeah, which is another not great guy, but
No, no,
this is different.
this is different.
This is
Absolutely,
different. Yeah.
they're all different. I mean, I think she respects me as an actor, which is one thing, and knows that if how can I say, it's important to put someone in these roles that is not afraid to expose the ugly parts of themselves. One of the things that I struggle with certain actors is a propensity to protect themselves, to say, it's not me. I'm not the racist. I'm not the pedophile. I'm not the bad guy. So they put a distance between themselves and the character out of some fear that the audience will think that they're
Hmm.
like that.
Yeah.
And what they end up doing is compromising the play, compromising the storytelling.
Mhm.
And for better or worse, I think I'm willing to use the parts of myself that are um, of use for each character to try not to separate myself from the character. And I think part of the reason that something like Passover can be as diabolical as it is because I am this minister's son named Gabriel. And so you see me bop in and use those elements of myself. And so then when it turns around and you realize who that character actually is, or like in the case of John Proctor as the villain, then if I can use the parts of myself that, how can I say this? I'm sort of rambling on. I guess she's willing to. She knows that she can trust me to go to the ugly bits, the ugly places.
Hmm.
Um, and I love the theater. I mean, I'm a real ensemble guy. Like part of my joy at Juilliard was being in an ensemble. Part of my great joy in Brief Encounter is being in an ensemble. I think part of the reason I was successful in Matilda is like I did the warm up with the kids every single day before the show. I loved being a part of those kids. And now one of those kids is in John Proctor with me. Um, and if you can get an actor who's willing to be a part of an ensemble like that, then it can rise. What is it? A rising tide lifts all boats.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into it. John Proctor's Villain. Like I said, I love audience reactions. One of my favorite audience reactions that I have heard is during I call it the grooming scene. I don't know if that's the correct thing to call it, but it's the scene between Carter Smith and Beth.
Yep.
And there's one particular, and again, so for those listening, spoiler,
Yes.
disclaimer, John
Pause now.
Proctor, yes, John Proctor segment of the podcast. We're getting into it. Spoilers to be had. So there's this one line that you say, I think it's I don't have any friends left. I can't remember the exact line. And then you have and the times that I have seen it, with the exception of maybe the first time because I saw it in previews, but as the show has gone on and the play has gained more popularity, I think some of the reactions are kind of the same. You hear the from the audience. The second time I saw it, you heard the groan, and then a few seconds later, you heard a bleh from.
Oh, yeah, I recall that evening.
Yeah, so that was a great thing. So as we were talking, I said I worked merch at the show. So I've seen it a few times and I asked front of house people, what would you ask Gabe if you could? And somebody said, I would be curious to know his thoughts on reactions when it comes to when there's an audience that's mostly adult or an audience where there was high school students
Yeah.
because they've had high school students there and they were saying that, some of the high school students saw Lee as the villain, especially after that scene with the character's name, I can't, Raylan.
Great Lynn, yeah.
Yeah. And how they just turned on him very quickly. So I'm curious to know, as somebody in the show, do you notice a difference in audience ages, how that affects yes, you're nodding, yes, people
Yeah.
cannot see what you're doing.
Oh,
So I'm
yeah.
curious to know what your thoughts are also as opposed to the audible bleh that happened. What have been some highlight reactions for you?
Well, I've done a lot of student matinees in my
Oh,
day.
yes.
I have never experienced something as electric as the two student matinees that we did of this show. One of the things that's really interesting, the character of Beth, played by Fina Straza, brilliantly Tony-nominated
Yeah.
performance.
Hmm.
Um, Adults watch her and look back on themselves as they watch her, and they have empathy for her naivete. They are tickled by and amused by her eagerness to please.
Hmm.
When the high schoolers watched it, they're like, I'm in school with this girl. I don't like this fucking girl.
Yeah.
I don't like her overachieving, hand raising
Hmm.
ways. You know what I mean? And the understudies just showed up. They're rehearsing. They'll be hollering. So they don't like Beth in the same way that an adult audience does. There's always the thing in a student matinee where someone kisses and they go, ooh, those
Yeah.
kinds of things you can expect. But this play, the laughs that we get from an audience are like from an adult audience is an audience looking back on high school and going, oh wow, I see. They didn't laugh at any of that stuff. The
Hmm.
they are living it. So it was a much more it was the rope seemed even tighter somehow. Now they were talking and they were, I wouldn't say disrespectful, but they were like it was a dialogue.
Hmm.
And when when Shelby drops the bombshell, I know your body remembers mine.
Hmm.
They and that scene changed. They just screamed for the entire scene change. She goes, it's funny, you're telling me to leave. 6 months ago you were asking me to come. They
Hmm.
just for the entire scene change. I don't come back for two scenes. When I came back, they booed. I just had to stand there and take a boo for about a minute.
Yeah.
Um, and there's something so, and then by the time the girls danced at the end, they were shrieking. I mean, they were shrieking. And I had a friend who actually came on one of the student matinee days, not knowing what they were in for. And this person was probably in their 50s. And they were shaking and radiating because they were moved by the play, but even more than being moved by the play, they're moved by the experience of sitting with young people experiencing this play.
Yeah.
And as a theater enthusiast that you are,
Yeah.
you know how powerful the theater can be, how intoxicating and exciting the theater can be. But your civilian doesn't really feel that way and might look at something like the Tony Awards or look at something like a musical and be like, this is dumb. I don't get this.
Hmm.
So to have a room full of New York City high schoolers feel seen, electrified, turned on by a play was really profound. And when we came out of the stage door at the end to sign autographs, it was like we were the Beatles. I mean, seriously. And people say wild stuff to me at the stage door.
Yeah, that I was going to ask.
People say
Um,
wild stuff to me at the stage door. And it's that thing of like an audience not really being able to separate the fact that I'm an actor, kind of knowing that I'm just doing my job, but also wanting to give me their 10 cents about what a piece of shit I am.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, asking me for an autograph, it's a very tricky thing. And I guess in a way, I had to do that during Passover. I had to do that during Matilda. It's a part of my career,
Yeah.
but this one is the most profound I've experienced.
I will say, so I don't usually like advertise who I'm about to interview, because and keep that close to the chest until I announce like I interviewed this person. So
Fun.
when I would the last time I worked it, I think it was last Saturday actually, um, people were on the merch line after the show, and I very slyly was like, if you had to ask that actor a question, what would you ask them? And I asked two different groups, and it was literally the same question. How could he play such a monster? Yeah.
That's the question. How can I play such a monster? Well, someone has to.
Yeah.
It's in the play.
Hmm.
And I really believe that if you want great heroes, you need great villains.
Hmm.
And the worst thing that I could do as an actor would be to kind of goes back to what I was saying before is like to compromise the integrity of the piece by trying to prove to the audience, oh, no, I'm just an actor. I'm not a bad guy.
Yeah.
And what that would be doing is like hurting the girls at the center of this story, hurting the woman who wrote this play, hurting the woman who directed this play. The entire design team is women. Like, if I, as one of the very few men in this working environment, compromise it by trying to say, oh, it's not me, I swear,
Yeah.
I would be ashamed of myself. And, similarly to Passover, like I had to play such a terrible racist.
Yeah.
Like, if I don't do it, then we can't actually look at what this is. And the people who, after I did Passover, the people who came up and gave me the most, like, hey, thank you for the work that you're doing, were Black audience members.
Hmm.
It, it wasn't white people, because white people, I think, are deeply uncomfortable. Similarly, like middle-aged and older men are, they like to make jokes to me after the show, like, they're really full of bluster.
Yeah.
But I do feel like young women are like, thank you, thank you.
Yeah.
And I take pride in that, and I think that's important. Like the last thing I'd want to do is get in the way of the storytelling. So why would I play such a monster? Because someone must, and I might as well do it justice.
And you do it so well.
Thank you.
So seeing the show as many times as I have, as I keep bringing it up, the first time I saw the show, I was sitting there saying to myself, if I was a teacher nowadays, because this was even before I knew what happened, because you think, for me, at least in my head, you think one thing happened to Shelby and then something else happened. And then when that scene is going on before like the reveal happens, it's like, oh, I think something happened with Shelby, Mr. Smith. And then it was like, ta-da!
Mm-hmm.
I literally sat there with my mouth open. And I said to myself, I fucking knew it. But what was interesting, having watched the show now, you kind of knowing what I know in the first part of the show, again, spoilers, you see their interactions, but you don't really see any possible something might have happened.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm curious to know, as the actor and playing this character, because I think also, and in talking to people who have seen the show, that he probably thinks he hasn't done anything wrong, which, I mean, you're the actor, that's up to you to decide.
Maybe,
Uh,
yeah.
so how was that purposeful? How was that played? Can you kind of guide? I'm just going to say me through it because I'm
Yeah.
curious to know about it. Because literally, it's as if like nothing happened. And I was also trying to watch Sadie Sink. Was she looking at you at certain points when she was back? How, because I mean, definitely in the last scene, there's a lot of that, but
Yeah.
how is that played out? I think you
Yeah.
understand what I'm trying to ask.
I totally understand the question. I mean, it's like if you were in an office environment with someone and something happened between the two of you and you wanted it to be private, you'd play it as cool as you could.
Mhm.
You'd try and keep it cool. As an actor, early on in the process, early on in rehearsals, I think I was like, ooh, I need to seed in some some undercurrents of tension, or I need to do a little foreshadowing here. And I have to give a lot of credit to Danya, our director, who was like, keep him golden, just keep him golden. This guy, as we learn in scenes, as the final scene of the play, this guy's gotten away with it his whole life.
Mhm.
And what part of the reason he gets away with it is because he's really sweet and he's really kind to people and he's really good at doing this. He's really good at compartmentalizing this. So um, don't give anything away. I remember early on there was a couple times where I like touched the back of a student. Like, hey, how you doing? You all right? Like of Ivy when she's weeping about her dad. And I remember in one note session, I was like, I should not touch anyone's back, right? She's like, no back touching. And also, no, don't play any of the foreshadowing because, as you said, you love audience reactions. And I think the reason that the audience reaction is so profound is because they don't know. And I love that you said, I fucking knew it, even though in the sentence before you said, I didn't know it.
Yeah.
And it's true because the audience goes, even though if I've done my job right, I've even seduced them a little bit and made them think, oh, but not Mr. Smith.
Yeah.
It's a great bit of playwriting that you think, is it this teacher? Oh, no, it's not. It's Ivy's dad. Oh, it's Lee.
Yeah.
She does a really good job of steering the audience's attention in other ways. And I think the reason that Shelby and Smith play so cool is because for their own livelihoods, they would.
Mhm.
And because the reason we do it as actors is it allows the audience to also feel the betrayal. And I think part of the reason they go, oh, is because they also are complicit in letting in guys like this getting away with it for years.
Yeah.
And part of the reason that the audience wants to boo and hiss at me when I'm playing that scene with Beth, the grooming scene, as you call it, is because they're starting to think about their own lives and the guys in their lives who have behaved like this or these certain interactions that they hadn't remembered for years. Some people have come up to me at the end and been like, I didn't even think about this thing my teacher did in 1985. And all of a sudden, these things start coming back to them and they realize, oh, maybe I'm complicit in this. And I think that's one of the great gifts that theater can give. And I think one of the great gifts Kimberly Bellflower gives in this play is she asks a lot of questions. She doesn't give you many answers. She makes you, as the audience, be like, wow, would I stand up and dance for these girls? Am I an ally or do I actually, wow, I believed the teacher.
Yeah.
I this side for way too long in this play, you know?
Well, what's interesting was in speaking with the front of house, I had two ushers say to me, there's some people who leave the show and actually think that he didn't do it.
Yeah, yeah,
So that's also an interesting conversation. But there is a moment you have in the conversation with Beth about green light scene before Shelby walks in, where she goes, oh my God, I didn't even think about it. And you two are very close and you're sitting in your chair and it looks like you're about to get up and do something. And then Shelby walks in. So I think, yeah, I catch things.
yeah.
So I think that's also like, I'm sorry. I I like studied you as much as
I,
I could that performance to like prep for
I'm,
this interview.
I'm honored. Thank you.
Yeah, and so I mean that was the moment I caught too because I'm like, oh, this is like his next prey, pretty much. And at least in my head, I think that even though you are nodding and nobody can see you doing that.
Sure. I
Yeah.
mean, that is uh,
Interpretation.
a valuable interpretation of what's happening.
Thank you as I smoke a fake cigarette. But I also wanted to talk to you about the end scene where Shelby comes back, and it's mostly the dance. And I think the catharticness that she has dancing freely as she does. And but before that, when they're doing their presentation, I was watching you specifically while they were talking, and there was a moment I think Raylan had or Shelby had where they say something to you, and you just have like a straight face, like I'm just watching my students. But then you had a moment for a few seconds where you looked off and you were just like, had this look on your face. And then a few seconds later, it turned back to, okay, I'm just watching my students. Can you talk me through that?
Sure. Sure. This guy has been through the adjudication process with the school, with the Board of Education, and they have given him his job back. They have taken his side over Shelby's. He's got his job. All he has to do is sit through this performance. He's got this one tricky day. Shelby's not even going to be in his class anymore. This guy is probably going to be at the school for the next 20 years. There'll be rumors about him, but there is a great image that I have on my phone of Daniel Day-Lewis as John Proctor from the Crucible film that they made. And I've had it as my screen for this whole process because I love his performance in that movie. And we read The Crucible in the rehearsal room. The Crucible is a huge part of this play. John Proctor's villain is literally the fucking title of the play.
Yeah.
So I have John Proctor on my phone, and it's this great image of him. And he's got this look in his eye. And that image was on our wall in the rehearsal room. And I've always loved what's going on in that picture. So part of me is like, I want to have an homage to that image at some point during the play. But also, I think Raylyn and Shelby start to zero in on me during their presentation and say, like, everything John Proctor did, you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that moment of me looking away and processing, in my head, it's Carter being like, just get through this 5 minutes. Just get through this fucking presentation. Let these girls say whatever they're going to say, and then we'll move on and we'll finish this. And I think that's part of the reason that I sort of put a nice smile back on and finish watching their presentation. And then they go over 5 minutes, and then my character tries to stop them because he can't handle it, and they don't stop. Spoiler. So in that moment, I think he's being exposed for the, as you would say, monster that he is, and he decides, okay, you get it, you get this for 5 minutes, and then it's my world again. And the thing that's sort of terrible about the play and about our nation and the world that we live in is it's true. It is his world again. And he is fine, and he is going to go on. And these girls are probably going to be punished for what they did in the class.
Do you think, because I feel like the last time I saw it and maybe a different time I saw it, there was two different reactions. But I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
When Beth gets up,
Yeah.
for me, when I saw it before I talked to somebody about it, I think for me in my head, I was like, oh, it's her understanding that Shelby was telling the truth. But then I was talking to somebody about it, and they said, oh, in the script it says, is she going to join them dancing? Is she not? Do you think Mr. Smith, Carter Smith, that's his? How do you feel as the actor in that moment seeing Beth get up? Do you think he's like, oh shit, I lost her? Or what do you think?
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the thing that's awesome about Kimberly Bellflower is like her stage directions are fucking immaculate. They're so good. And um, Tilly Evans Krieger, who choreographed the dance, brought in um, this great dance that she'd worked on. And then there was a really cool day in rehearsal where they did the dance and we read out every stage direction because there is a lot of storytelling that takes place in the dance. And and we made sure that we were lining up the choreography with the storytelling. The final stage direction is like Beth stands, she looks at the girls, she looks at Mr. Smith. Is she going to join the dance? She might. She just might. Blackout. So my thought in the quote unquote grooming scene and in that is like Carter really likes the way that Beth sees him. Whether or not he has designs on trying to have some kind of sexual relationship with her, I think is up to the interpretation of the audience.
Mhm.
I don't really want to speak on that, on what I think on that, but I think that he likes the way that he looks in her eyes. It makes him feel good about himself. He knows he's a sinner. He knows he's done some reprehensible things in his past, and she doesn't see any of that.
Mhm.
And slowly becomes clear to him that he even says, like, my wife doesn't believe me at one point. She says she believes me, but she doesn't. I can tell. So no one, he doesn't like the way he looks through anyone's eyes except for Beth's,
Mhm.
what I think. And when she stands at the end and she looks at me, I think he realizes, oh, fuck, I lost that too. And then, the audience gets to, one of the things that I love about the play, so many shows end with an exhale, like, oh, end of play. This one ends, oh, end
Yeah.
of play. Audience goes out into the world filled with that breath and going, oh my God, what did we just see? What's going to happen? Is Beth going to be okay? What just happened? And I think that's one of the real reasons that the play leaves the audience with that feeling. I mean, the dance is so cathartic, but you leave on an inhale. You don't leave on an exhale.
Yeah. Every time I have seen it, the 3.5 times I have seen it, I've been working. So I can't like leave the
Sure.
theater like tears selling t-shirts to people coming up to my booth. But it really gets to me every time because it's that cathartic feeling of Shelby just dancing out her frustrations and all of that. Before I let you go, do you think John Proctor is the villain? I know it's a cliche question, but I had to ask it.
That's great. I think it's a great question.
I will say though, I've had many people come up to the booth and be like, I've always thought he was the villain.
That's right. I
They're
have
like
to.
English professors, like
Have
female
to.
English professors.
Yes. People being like, yeah, I always thought this play was fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
I will say, do I think John Proctor is the villain? I mean, the sort of simple answer would be no. I think hypocrisy is the villain. I think that the church is the villain in that particular show, but I don't think he's the hero either, to my mind. And I think Miller is saying this, but I don't want to put words in Arthur Miller's mouth because he's very capable of speaking for himself. I think Elizabeth Proctor is the hero of the play. I think she is the moral center of the play. I think that the women are the most honest people in that play, and that the men are the most dishonest. Um, at the end of the play, as he is about to sign the lie and to save his own life, he sees Rebecca Nurse, the old woman who's delivered all these babies, and she says, "Oh, John, not you." And it's through seeing her see him lie and seeing his wife see him lie that he decides to rip up the paper and say no. I think I think Goody Proctor is the hero for my money. I don't think John Proctor is the hero, but I don't think he is the villain. I think he's a flawed man. I think he's a sinner.
So one last question I have before I let you go. I was told I should ask you about your pre-show warm-ups,
I
just
that was
specific.
well. If you're talking to Logan, are you doing merch with Logan?
Yes, I am, but he was not the one who asked me
Oh,
to ask.
interesting. Okay. And what would you like to know?
I don't know. I was like, what should I? They're like, just ask him. So
Yes,
I was told I should ask you.
I am a ritualistic theater animal, and as I've gotten older, I realize it borders on the obsessive compulsive. I am often the first one to the theater, and
Hey.
I kiss all of my props. I kiss every chair in the auditorium, each performance. I don't go around and kiss each chair, but I kiss my hands and run through the aisles. I say like my little prayer to the ghosts of the Booth Theater. There's a statue of Edwin Booth. I always touch him on the head, say hello to him. There's a statue of a little cherub upstairs. I always touch him, say hello to him. I have a pretty rigorous physical and vocal warm up that I do, which takes about a half hour. So, and then, and after I do all that, it's 6 o'clock and our show's at 7 o'clock. So then I get to the stage, and at 6 o'clock is when some of the company likes to come on stage and warm up their voices. So I go on stage and warm up my voice with them. And that's where we get to chat and say, how's your day? How you doing? All that kind of stuff. So sometimes when I'm exhausted and I'm getting to the theater 2.5 hours before, I think, why have I decided on this? When did I become this guy? Why am I here? But I just believe in it. I don't know. Part of the reason I kiss all the chairs is because I believe in like charging the space so that when the audience comes in, like I've been out there and I've said we're going to have a good show today, and I'm going to charge this space with my positive energy. And I care about every single chair, and I'm going to try and affect anyone who sits in any of these chairs with my performance. And that's part of the reason that I want to touch all of them. I check in with all my props, I make sure they're at the right angles because I want to give a performance that's sharp. And so, like, I know the angle that the crucible should be at so that I can pick it up and hold the title up. I know where the piece of chalk should be on the thing so that I can write what I need to write on the chalkboard. It's it's a bit much, but it's who I am. What can I say?
Whatever works for you. That
Sure.
you don't do that on a two-show day though, right? Or do you just do a two-show day, you kiss? Okay. So for those seeing John Proctor, just know that Gabe has been there.
That's right. That's right. I've been out there.
He blessed you for seeing the show. Gabe, thank you so much for coming on. You can stay on once we're done recording. For those listening, I cannot emphasize it enough. Go see John Proctor's The Villain. It is so good. It's extended till the end of August. Are you in the show until then? Yes. And they just announced the new Shelby today,
Yeah, Chiara Aurelia. Yeah.
which is really exciting because I was curious to know who they were gonna get.
Okay.
Yeah, just again, just go see John Proctor's Villain. It's so fucking good. I want everybody in the world to go see this play. It's
Yeah.
great. It
Yeah. It's a great piece of theater and it's a great piece of writing and it will make you feel and it will make you think. I mean, what more can you ask for from the theater?
and that's what you want in a
Yeah.
theater piece. All right, everyone, thanks for listening and go see John Proctor's The Villain.
Thank you.